Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us. We're about to get started in about 2 minutes. What I'm going to do is two things. First, I'm going to ask you to answer the first polling question, and just to get an idea for who's here, accounting professional, IT software consultant, non-accounting professional. So just kind of give us a quick idea of who's here. And on the other token here in the questions box, to both test the questions box and check my audio. In a scale from 1 to 10, how is my audio? And I'm just looking for a response. I probably wouldn't be able to do anything about it if it's less than a 10. But I'm getting a bunch of 10s. That's good. See, I have this sexy radio voice, and it actually works out really well. All right, perfect, guys. So let's leave the polling question up for another 30 seconds or so, and this will be sort of the first of the polling questions. But there's going to be 4 polling questions in total, and you have to answer 3 out of the 4 in order to get your CPE certificate. All right. All right, perfect. James says it's 2. Thank you, James. At least we have one contrarian in the group. Okay, let's see. We got about 87% of the votes. I'm gonna leave it up for another 10 seconds, and we're gonna get started. Okay, perfect. Close the poll. Let's share the screen. Should be looking at my second screen. Maximize. You're gonna hear a brief silence while I hit record, and we're gonna get started. Welcome everybody to QB Power Hour. Today is Thursday, November 8th, 2018. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Avalara. This is part 2 of a special series we have with Avalara. Part 1, we talked about the AvaTax app that allows Avalara to calculate sales tax across multiple jurisdictions across the United States and actually international as well, but we focus more on the US. And today we're going to be talking about TrustFile, which is their compliance tool to file and remit sales tax returns. So we'll talk about QB Power Hour briefly for a few minutes. Then we'll talk about the CPE process, and then we're going to dive right in and do at least 50 minutes worth of Avalara's TrustFile. So real quick, QB Power Hour, it's a webinar series, usually twice a month or every other Thursday. Next episode is going to actually be next week. This was a special episode we created just for Avalara, our sponsor. But next week, we're going to do a post QB Connect episode, and we're going to bring you to this webinar everything that we learned at the big annual QuickBooks conference. You don't want to miss next week's episode. It's going to be jam-packed with new features, new things happening in the QuickBooks Online ecosystem. Then we're going to follow through with standard every other week schedule. So the next one will be November 29th. The topic is still to be determined. And then we're going to do December 13th, where we're going to talk about QuickBooks Enterprise Mobile Warehouse app, and then just go from there. We usually cover about 50% QuickBooks Online, 50% QuickBooks Desktop, but from time to time, we'll bring a special guest, third-party app, practice management topics, such as today. Michelle Long, my co-host, she's not presenting with me today, but definitely check out her books in Amazon and her LinkedIn group called Successful QuickBooks Consultants. It has over 160,000 members. About myself, I'm Hector Garcia, CPA, work and live in the Miami, Florida area. I teach QuickBooks in my own classroom. There's my website. There's my email. There's my Twitter handle. I'm easy to reach. Let me know if you have any questions. About the CPE process, everyone here who's a CPA or certified bookkeeper that needs a CPE must attend live. We're going to record this and post it into my YouTube channel. But if you watch the replay, you don't get the CPE certificate. As long as you're logged in for at least 50 continuous minutes and you answer 3 out of the 4 polling questions, you will get your CPE certificate. CPE certificates will be emailed in about 3 weeks. We are only behind the last episode's CPE certificate. Every other certificate has been done and emailed at this point. We'd like to thank Avalara, our webinar series silver sponsor, our sole sponsor for the moment. So thank you, Avalara, for that. And they're sponsoring both the webinar series through the end of 2018 and with these special episodes. So definitely, uh, 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 thank us and appreciate QB Power Hour by checking out what they have to offer for the small business and the accounting community at avalara.com. And with that being said, we'll make it that simple. We'll be done. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to our special guest, Kyla. So I'm going to make her a presenter. And Kyla, would you like me to introduce you, or you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Hector. I can go ahead and introduce myself and kind of explain who we are, what we do. So first off, can everyone, is the screen showing okay? It switched over, I think.
Not yet. It's showing a black screen. So maybe switch monitors, or let me. Yep, now it's good. Go
There we
ahead.
go. Okay, perfect. So to share a little bit about myself and then my firm, essentially, my name is Kayla Cormello. I've been a CPA here for about 4 to 5 years, and about 2 years ago, we started to really explore this area of e-commerce. So the primary function of what we do is actually related to e-commerce. So as many of you can expect, with the way the sales tax is moving go forward, sales tax is becoming very, very relevant to what we do and the clients that we help. Um, we do, we do a number of things. We are a full service firm, so we do bookkeeping, income tax, sales tax, tax planning, just about every aspect of a business that you can imagine. Sales tax being, more and more relevant to what we do as the rules change, with sellers as they grow, their liability in each state grows. So we really look closely at sales tax to determine where is the liability, what is the risk, and once we have determined that, we use TrustFile to help us get the compliance aspect of it handled in terms of the monthly and quarterly filings, pulling in the data to accurately report to the states what needs to be reported. So it's a pretty exciting area. Areas with a lot of change can either be stressful or exciting, and we view it as exciting because it really gives us the opportunity to help people understand and do what's right for their business. So that's a little bit about myself and what we do. I'm going to turn the focus to really talking about TrustFile and how it's used. It is something that we use very frequently. We have a number of clients in there. I did just want to preference that we do have a live demo available towards the end of the webinar. So if there's a specific area that you're questioning as we kind of go through this presentation, please keep in mind that we will have the availability to kind of click around later if anyone wants to explore a certain area further. But really, the first aspect of TrustFile is getting everything set up, just like it is with any other software. So the first step is setting up the business, and it's very easy to do with TrustFile. The view that you're seeing right now is it's the TrustFile client portal for us. So we have, when we log in, all of our clients are available at kind of this thumbnail type of a display. So we have the first client on the left, second on the right to kind of explain that. But if we wanted to add a new client, we would simply just hit this Add a Company button that's circled in the middle of the screen. And when that pops up the next window, you just need to add the general information for the company. So really it's going to be the taxpayer name, the identification number, the company address, and then a contact phone number and email. For us, since we handle all these different aspects of sales tax, we have our information in there for the contact phone number and email. So if there are any issues, Avalara can get to us as soon as possible, and the client doesn't really get bogged down with dealing with any kind of correspondence. We handle all of that by putting our information in there. So that's kind of the first step. And then after that, in TrustFile, you can either elect for them to remit the tax payments after they file the return, or you can do that yourself. For most of us, we select to have Avalara go ahead and remit the tax payment when they file the return, so that it's the full service aspect. We don't have to really go in there and do much outside of what we do in TrustFile. So after we set up the business, we'll go in here and we will add the payment and remittance information. And it's important to note that with sales tax, most states do not allow you to pay with a credit card or debit card. So when you're adding that remittance account, it typically does have to have an ABA routing number and an account number so that they can, when they go in to file, they can make the payment using that information. So that's an important step. If there's no account information in there, you'll typically get it, and you've selected the box that you want Avalara to remit the tax, you'll usually get an email from TrustFile just letting you know that they don't have any checking information on file, and it will give you the opportunity to get that added so that they can get that completed for you. And then as far as where this is found, it's actually found in the settings, which is the top right of the web page you see when you sign in. So it's pretty easy to find and very simplistic, which is something that works really well for us. Okay, and once you get the business set up and you get the payment account in there, you begin the process of setting up each state. So, you know, this varies from person to person. Some clients might be registered in 1 or 2 states. Some clients may be registered in, you know, 20 to 30 states. So you really just need to add the states that you're registered in. And then as you pick up new states, it's really easy to add them later. So when you get in here, you're going to add the state, and you're going to do that by clicking this Add a State Registration, which if you look back here, it's on the right side, the second option in blue down. So you click that button, and then it will pop up this form that basically is looking for some of the detail from the state. So once you add the state registration, it's going to ask you what state are you trying to add and what form, what tax form is required, and then the filing frequency. Typically, if you select the filing frequency, it will help you know which form needs to be filed, because there are different forms based on, you know, monthly, quarterly, annually, all those things involved in that. So pretty straightforward, and I do feel like Avalara makes it as easy as possible so that you're not filing the wrong thing and you can feel confident with what you've done. All right, so once you've added a state, it will appear on your dashboard, and you can see this is what it will look like for everyone. It has the state, how often you're going to file, which is right under the state name, and then it's on the dashboard, it's going to pull through any of your current returns. So it's going to tell you the period for which that return is calculated, and then you'll see right under that it does have the form name. So if you ever need to double check, it's very easy to do. And one thing to point out on this specific state, we just added it. There's no data in there yet for TrustFile to understand what to pay or what to file. So it's blank there, and you'll see later in the presentation once the data is in there, it does offer you, it will show you what tax has been collected and what's going to be filed. So to add more state information, you'll see the state setting option right under the grayed out box. So once you click state settings, it will pull up this screen for you. And this is a very important screen. And it's one that our firm spends the most time in to make sure that everything is set up correctly, which then in turn will allow TrustFile to do its job, right? So to kind of break down the screen and spend some good time on it, here's the form, which that was on the initial setup screen for the state as well. So this is just kind of reconfirming that this is the form that you're going to want to file. The nice part is the form is a drop-down, so you don't need to worry about you know, manually typing in what form you need. Avalara gives you all the options, and as I had mentioned earlier, it's really driven by your filing frequency. So if you're filing quarterly versus monthly, you know, Avalara is going to help you get through that. And then if you have any questions, you can go directly to the Department of Revenue to make sure that you have the correct form. But they do make it pretty easy. The next spot is really going to be important in terms of the return, because this is going to populate on the return. This is your state sales tax license number. One thing I really like that Avalara does is, you can't see it now because there's an input there, but when it's blank, Avalara will actually populate the format of the tax license number because as you know, when you get those certificates and all the letters from the states, they have a lot of different numbers on there. And sometimes it's confusing to know, okay, well, what number do I need to put as my license number? What is the number, that you really need? So the nice part is it will populate kind of a default format, so you can kind of look for that presentation and know that you have the right number. So in this example, Georgia, it's usually 3 numbers, a dash, and then 6 numbers. So that's pretty helpful to going in that you have the right number. So after that, another big part of it is almost all the state filings are done electronically with TrustFile. So in order for TrustFile to get into the state's account and be able to file these returns, they need the username and password that you have for the Department of Revenue website for that specific state. So in here, it's really simple. You would just input your user ID, name, and then the password. And then that is the extent of it. So once that's in there, then the agent who's working on your sales tax return can log in, and then they can go ahead and proceed with the filing. But as many of you may know, if you have direct experience with sales tax, a lot of states and more continue to do so, enabled this 2-step verification. So in order for Avalara to get in there, you have to go into the Department of Revenue website and update the 2-step factor email to this email address, which will populate different for everybody within TrustFile. So once you've established your TrustFile, you pull up this screen, it'll tell you what email address you need to put in there in order for it to send the 2-step verification to the agent that's working on the sales tax return. And then you'll notice to the right, there's another email, and that's where you would put your email, which is really nice because it will auto forward whatever is sent to the Avalara email. So you're not going to miss any communications. You don't have to worry if you get locked out, not being able to get back in. And I will say, based off experience, this works really well. Anytime an email is sent to this TrustFile email, I will get one at my personal email as well, so that we always have the communication. So once you've done that, you just need to check this little box that says I have changed my DOR email, so that Avalara knows that if they log into the account, they're not going to run into any roadblocks and not be able to access the account due to this 2-step factor. And as I had mentioned before, TrustFile will remit the payment on your behalf if you want them to, but also if you feel more comfortable, remitting the payment on your own, you can have that option as well. So within the state settings, right below, you'll see it says remittance preference. And we always remit when the return is filed. We just have Avalara draft the funds, which it actually is drafted by the Department of Revenue. It doesn't go through Avalara first or anything. They just go in there and enter the account information on your behalf and get everything paid for you. And even if you wanted to control it on a state-by-state basis, and if you wanted to maybe pay California yourself, but then have others automatically paid, you can change this setting based on the state. So you don't have to do it all one way or all another, which is pretty nice. There's also an auto file setting, which you'll see below. Basically, that means that Avalara is going to automatically file the return. You don't have to actually initiate that process. That's not something we typically do, because we do like to do a reconciliation and review what Avalara is pulling in, just to ensure everything is in order. And then we will manually file or push the file button, and Avalara does the rest from there. But some people just want it to automatically go into autopilot, and that's what that function is used for. And then at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see an enabled button, and that is green right now because this particular client is registered in Georgia. But if something changed, and let's say they canceled their registration with the state, you would just toggle this to off, and then Avalara would remove it from the dashboard so that you're no longer having to see those inactive returns. All right. And Hector, did you want to go ahead and do a polling question?
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Let me run a polling question. And I do have a regular question to ask. and it's natural for folks in this webinar to ask that. Is the data that related to sales tax that's going to populate in that coming in from QuickBooks online directly, or is that manually being entered?
Right, and that's a great question, and we'll kind of get towards that, get to that answer towards the the end of the webinar. So if that question is still a question after that, we can definitely revisit it. But to answer kind of quickly, some softwares do automatically sync, so you don't have to do anything; it will automatically load in. But some you do have to manually upload with a CSV. But we'll get into more detail around that specific area.
Okay, sounds like you're leading up to that anyway.
Right.
Okay, so that was the question they had. And the other question is, just real quick, maybe you can answer it. Does it work with QuickBooks Desktop, or is it just online, or do you know?
We work with
And
both QuickBooks Desktop and online. This
Okay,
is Bruce
that's
from
Bruce
Avalara.
from Avalara, by the way, just because we hadn't introduced him. Okay, so confirmed, it does work with um, desktop and online. Okay, perfect.
Correct.
And someone's asking a question. We don't want to get probably deep into it, but Avalara My Lodge. I guess that's for rental properties, different than this app, correct?
That is completely different from this app, yes.
Okay.
And they have its own, because of the lodging taxes, they have their own reporting process and services there.
All right, so we're not going to discuss that. We're more focused on like e-commerce type of businesses today.
That's correct. But if anybody has questions, if they want to just forward them to you, I'll be happy to put them in touch with the My Lodge folks.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks. All right, I think we're good to go to close the polling question. The polling question's been up for about 2 minutes. Kyla, I think you can keep going now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Hector. So we've talked about the business setup and the state setup, on the TrustFile side. Now it's all about getting the data from whatever you're using to collect or to calculate the sales tax into TrustFile so that you can file the returns. So there's two ways to do this, and you can do a direct data sync, or you can upload it manually using a CSV file. Here's kind of a snip of all the different apps that TrustFile does support. But really, if you can get the data in a way that it can be uploaded, you can upload from anywhere to get this piece filed for you. So, but to kind of speak to the auto sync, like Amazon.com, obviously one that we use a lot. It does auto sync to Avalara, which is really nice because it pulls real time, and we don't need to worry about going in and uploading anything for that specific platform. So it's really nice. But to get into it a little bit deeper, 1 second. To talk about the CSV file upload, because you will need to do that in some cases, but it is very easy to do. You can click to upload a file when you are in TrustFile, and then they do provide a template right here. So if you hit download CSV template, it'll populate a CSV file for you to be able to move your data into. And then from there, you hit upload file, the blue button in the bottom, and that will pop up a browsing window. You navigate to it, and then it will upload. As far as what the CSV template consists of, these are the elements you'll need to go ahead and upload that file into TrustFile. Pretty standard stuff, the order ID, the date, the address, just stuff like that. There is an origin and a shipping address, just because there are different states that have different rules in terms of sales tax based on destination or origin. So those are in there to kind of care for that piece. And to kind of show an example of uploading, so this was actually something that I had pulled from PayPal, because we have a client that uses PayPal for some of its sales. And I went in and which if you look above here, another nice thing that Avalara does is they have these data export guides, which will give you step-by-step instructions for each one of these platforms to go to be able to pull this data, which is helpful just because for every platform, it's something different, and this kind of simplifies it by giving some steps in order to do that. So for this PayPal example, I followed the instructions. I went to PayPal and I pulled the data, and then I cleaned it up a little bit and got rid of the rows that aren't needed for TrustFile, and then put it into the CSV file. And then once I submitted that, you'll see something pop up on TrustFile that is basically calculating what you've done, right? So you have it transforming the data, determining the rates, and then preparing the return essentially. And in terms of how long that takes, it varies on how big the CSV file is. I think it goes really quick. You know, I'd say a couple of seconds, not minutes. You know, if you have a moderate size file, but again, if you have a very big file, it could take a little bit longer. But overall, our experience has been that it's been very quick. Okay, so once the data is in there, which again can happen by automatic sync or by the CSV upload, you'll now have a tax due showing in orange, whereas before, like I had mentioned, that was not there. But now that data is in TrustFile, it does show that. And then from there, you can actually go and view the tax return that Avalara has created. And you can do that by either clicking on the actual thumbnail itself or clicking the View Return button on the bottom. So it's pretty easy to get to. And then it will pop this screen up for you, which will show you, you know, this kind of summary version. You'll see the tax that was uploaded, the amount that is calculating as due, and the due date. The File Now button is what you're going to hit when you want to go ahead and proceed with the filing. So Avalara won't do anything unless you elected for automatic filing until you hit that button right there. So that makes it pretty easy to kind of monitor where you are in the process. And then you have the option to print the return as well. And that's one thing that, you know, we have a number of different employees that work on TrustFile and do these for all different clients. And the nice thing is the consistency. You know, despite how different your client might be, this piece is consistent, and it's easy to get staff all on the same page just because it will be the same every time in terms of expectations, how it's going to present, just a pretty slick system. All right. So as I had mentioned, we usually do not elect to automatically file. We like to review the return, just make sure, you know, based off what we expect to see is what we're seeing, which is the truth most of the time. It's not something we really ever have to worry about. But it does populate a copy of the form so that you can actually see how it would present if you were to print it out in paper and file it that way. And then furthermore, it lets you review the transactions that are making up those numbers, which is a big part of our reconciliation process. So if you hit View Return Transactions, it will pop up this little window here, and it shows you, you know, on the left under Items, it shows you how many transactions are making up this return. It shows you the gross sales for the period, the tax collected in the period, and then an overall total. So it's pretty slick. It breaks down transaction by transaction, and then you'll also see that it has the source on the right towards the bottom. So that is telling you that this number came from Amazon.com, which is set up for an automatic sync. If you had manually uploaded a file, a CSV file, then that file would come through as it would, whatever you name the file would be the source. So you can really tell, you know, where did this number come from? Did it come from a direct sync? Did it come from a file upload? You'll get a pretty good perspective on where is that data coming from. All right, and then another cool thing that this does is you can view a jurisdiction liability report. For most states, it's not a very exciting report. You know, it just has one line. But for the states that have different tax rates for local taxes and, you know, local jurisdictions, it will actually break those out by the jurisdiction, which is really helpful. You know, if you need to really, if you need to do this return manually for whatever reason, you know, you can pull this report. Saves you a lot of time from having to go look up zip codes and figure out what county, you know, this particular city is in. So that's a pretty nice feature that we use from time to time as well. All right, so there are a couple fields here that are important to be aware of. So when you're in that transactional level data, you'll see sometimes there will be an error or an alert. And that's TrustFile's way of trying to, bring your attention to certain items that they either feel are, not normal, or there's an error where that data isn't pulling in for whatever reason. So in this example, I'm showing an example of an alert. So if you look down in the detail here, you'll see that the reason why Avalara has flagged this particular transaction is because the price is coming in at 0, and then that there's 0 tax. So it's saying, hey, is there supposed to be a number here? And you can clear this by going and searching the order ID in whatever platform you need to go to, which is nice so that you don't have to spin your wheels trying to find where the specific transaction should be. And then you actually have the option to update it too. So once you get in here and you click around, figure it out, you can select the hyperlink right under the word return that says Colorado, October 2018. You can click on that, enter the data if it's missing and it needs to be in there, and that will clear the alert so that you can proceed with the filings. An example of an error would be if there was a location missing. So sometimes with the Amazon reports, they're not the cleanest reports ever, just because users can specifically type in their own fields. It's not like, so for example, for the state, a user can type in California instead of just a drop down that says CA. So if we're manually uploading from Amazon, we'll usually have to look out for those. And if the user had put C.A or California spelled out, it'll usually come through as an error in TrustFile. And we simply go in there and we click it and update it to CA, and then everything gets updated and pulled to the return. And another important part to know is you don't have to like manually search for all these errors or alerts. You can actually click errors or alerts, and it will just pull in any errors and alerts and take out all the data that is clean. So that makes it pretty easy. All right, and then you do have the option to manually add a transaction. So it's this option right here on the right. So if you had a big sale, that was done outside of Amazon for once, like you had someone come to your store personally from out of state or what have you, and you need to add a transaction, you can just hit this add transaction and it will pop up this window. And the nice part is you can just enter in the bare basics of the transaction, and then it will add to Avalara with all your other transactions and be included in the filing of the return. All right. And Hector, did you want to do another polling question?
Yes, perfect. And I also have other questions to ask. Give me 1 second. So Avalara has a accountant partner program, which I'm part of. And whenever I get this sort of complicated, multi-state, multi-platform sales tax clients, I tend to just send them over to Avalara. They have different programs. Some are just support. Some are actual monetary referral programs where you send them to Avalara and then they take care of the client from there. In some cases, I do the implementation. In some cases, I don't. So if you want to know more about that, Avalara will send you one email with the information and links and whatever you need. So all you have to do is opt in or opt out for that. All right. So meanwhile, we got a couple things here. There's actually a lot of questions. So one is a common theme here is understanding the difference between AvaTax and TrustFile. So AvaTax is the one that actually calculates the sales tax, right? It checks the address of the invoice, calculates the sales tax or recalculates the sales tax. And TrustFile is the one that actually files the tax return. The big question is, does AvaTax talk to TrustFile? Like, how does that work? So, Kyla or Bruce.
This is Bruce. Avatax does talk to TrustFile in that we can take calculated transactions that have occurred to Avatax and bring them into TrustFile for returns purposes. Or we also have a comprehensive managed return service where We do all of the preparation, all of the filing, everything that you see that Kyla's been walking through. We have a large staff that does that for you or for your clients, and we do everything. We pull the money out of the end client's account and pull that into an Avalara account and then disperse that with the filings. So you have two different options. You can either use TrustFile, which is more of a do-it-yourself type of option, or you can outsource it completely for a managed return service. If you're not working with a firm like Kyla's who does sales tax preparations for you.
Right, and you can use either one, right? So you either use your current platform for calculating sales tax, and you use TrustFile simply just to copy data from one place and prepare the return based on another system, or you can use Avatax to calculate it, and you can print out reports from QuickBooks or Avatax, whatever, and file the returns yourself. So these are two independent systems that could be used in combination or not.
That's correct.
There are some specific questions. I don't know if we want to get too in depth in this, but someone is saying, does Avalara file remote sellers sales tax for Oklahoma, which they call it use tax? If that's too specific, I can send you the contact info and you can answer that later on.
Yes, let's do that if you would.
Okay, so somebody is asking if there's a 10-day lead time for North Carolina return. Is it the same for all states? So maybe that's also very state specific. So I'll send you the contact information for.
Well, let me go ahead and answer.
Yes.
Yeah, let me go ahead and answer that one. It does vary from states, and you see that file by and the due date in the screens that Kyla was showing. The difference is there are some states where we have the ability to transmit directly to the state, and we don't have to upload files or manually enter the returns into the state on your behalf. And in those states, you can come right up to very close to the actual tax due date before you have to file. But in those states where we're having to either upload or manually enter the transactions in the state website, that's where you will have that 10-day lead time.
Okay.
So you will see that as when Kyla was showing in the screens, you would see that file by date and the due date will either be the same or different based on the filing method that the state is supporting for us.
Okay, and the other question
And
is...
we'll talk a little bit about that more too, just to let you guys know.
Okay, last question. If you use QuickBooks Online to calculate sales tax, can you still use TrustFile to get the data from QuickBooks Online without having to export anything into a CSV file?
Yes, you can.
Okay, all right. So, Kyla, I'm going to go ahead and close the polling question and give you back the floor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Hector. So to kind of continue forward, manually adding a transaction, like I was mentioning, very easy to do. It's rare that you'll ever need to do it. Usually if you're doing the upload via CSV or the sync, it's very rare that you'll have anything like this. But if the occasion arises, pretty easy to do, and that's how you would do that. All right, and then another good feature that we use from time to time is being able to search for a specific transaction, that is making up that you need to do additional research on, or just want to make sure that particular transaction is included. And you can search a number of different ways in here. You can search directly, keyword search, just like you would with Google or any other kind of search engine. You can do a date range. So if you know the transaction was on the 1st of October, you can kind of filter by that. And then you can even get even deeper and really look at the jurisdiction. If there's a specific return or returns that you are looking in, you can look for source, and then you can hide certain fields. If you didn't want it to pull in any errors or alerts or whatever, you have that option available to you too. So pretty easy to use, very intuitive, and again, not super common that we've ever had to use it, but it is there in the event that it's needed. All right, so this was something that Bruce started talking about a little bit in terms of the filing dates and the state due dates, so I do want to talk a little bit about that. You'll see here on this clip of the dashboard for this particular state that there is a file by in orange and a due by in gray. So the file date is when you have to submit it to Avalara. So again, if you have opted in for the auto file option, you won't have to worry about this piece. But if you want to initiate the filing, you need to do it by the 10th of every month, or Avalara won't be able to do that service for you, and you would have to go manually file at that point. And they do vary from state to state. As Bruce was saying, some states are really slick and it just imports automatically to the state. So you can literally file the day of the due date. All other returns are considered concierge filing. So you actually, there's a rep from Avalara that is actually going in to the State Department of Revenue websites and manually filing those returns. So they need a little bit of time to be able to do that, especially with volume and everything like that. So most states, you're going to file by the 10th of every month. There are exceptions where you don't need to file quite as soon, but a majority will be the 10th of every month. And then the due dates do vary on the state. For example, Kentucky is due the 20th of every month, whereas California is due the last day every month. So that does vary, but pretty consistently, it's going to be the 20th through the end of the month in terms of when the actual due date is for the return. All right, and then as far as when the payment is coming out, if TrustFile is going to be remitting the payment on your behalf, the funds can come out anywhere from the 10th to the 31st, depending on the state. So again, if there's a return that's due the 20th, typically you'll see that clear the account, the 20th to the 25th. Whereas if it's a state like California that's not due till the 31st, you'll see that pulled out of the account just after the 31st in the following month. All right, and to kind of walk through the different statuses you're going to see as you go through this filing process, as shown on the initial screens, you're going to see File Now. That's the button you need to click to initiate the filing. Once you've returned you've reviewed the return, you're comfortable with everything, you're going to hit File Now, and that'll pop up this screen, which is kind of a summary of what you've seen in the previous screen. So it's telling you the gross sales, the tax collected, and then the payment amount on the right. That is what, if you selected Avalara to remit the tax, they are going to pull out of the account listed below, where it says payment account. And then again, it recaps the due date, the timing of everything, and just says, please make sure the funds are in the account because they are going to submit the payment and you want to make sure that it clears. So once you hit File and Remit in the screen, the status will then change to this green button that says Filing. And it will stay there until the Avalara agent has actually gone in and manually filed the return, or if it's an automatic link, it has gone to the state and the state has accepted it. And then once it's filed, it changes the status to filed. So it's a pretty quick look system. This is all available on the dashboard for the client when you link in. So you can review all the states really quick and be able to determine where they are at in the filing process by these icons that'll be listed right next to the state name. All right, and then like there is with everything, sometimes there is some troubleshooting involved. So in this particular situation, what happened is we had updated the password for Arizona in the Department of Revenue website, and we forgot to update that in Avalara. So when the agent went in to go ahead and update to file the return, they weren't able to get in. So you'll get an email like this that basically says, hey, we do need that information from you. Please supply it as soon as possible so that we can file the return for you. In my experience, the turnaround is very, very quick. I'll usually go into TrustFile, update the information, and then the agent can go in and complete the filing. So it's pretty slick. And if there's ever any kind of issue, whether it be a login issue or the payment account is missing, Avalara will send you an email so that you have some kind of an action item to get the filing completed. All right. And then once the return has actually been filed, you can see the confirmation through the status like I showed you earlier that shows the filed status. But you also get a confirmation email from Avalara that just, rest assured, you're good to go. This one has been filed. It recaps the tax that's been paid. And, in terms of when you can expect to see the funds drafted from the account. And then there will be a blue link that you can actually click and it will pull you to the return that was filed, just so again, you have everything at your fingertips should you ever need it in the event of an audit or anything like that. It's really accessible. All right, and then in some instances, you may need to go in and manually file returns. So in our situation, we had one client that didn't get us all the sales tax information by the 10th. So we had to go in and manually file the returns ourselves with the Department of Revenue. But TrustFile was still a very big piece of what we did for this filing, because if you click the thumbnail of the return and you view the transactions, it'll give you all the numbers you need to manually go file the return, which is really helpful. If anyone has experienced manually filing in California in particular, that state can take a couple hours to do if you have to go figure out what county a specific zip code is in or whatever. Whereas if you upload the CSV file into TrustFile, it will pull and put everything where it needs to go. So Avalara may not be able to file on your behalf because you're beyond the 10th, but they can at least populate the form and give you the tools to file it efficiently on your own. So that's pretty cool. And then you can still track it within TrustFile, in terms of what returns you've done, what returns you haven't done. If you click this little box that says I've already filed this return, it'll change that status to filed so that you know it's taken care of. The thing to note though is if you do click that box, you can't unclick it. You need to contact support and they'll make sure to get it reversed for you for whatever reason. All right, and then another thing that's very helpful for us, we not only use TrustFile to file our tax returns, but bookkeeping is a big part of what we do for our e-commerce sellers as well. So when we're trying to book the liability for sales tax in terms of what's been collected and what's going to be due, TrustFile is always tracking what is accruing if you have any automatically synced data. So a majority of our sellers, their biggest presence is going to be Amazon.com. And since we have TrustFile automatically synced and it's real time, it's actually accruing what sales tax has been collected, in a specific time frame. So this shows that, there's about $11,000 due this month, $4,000 is accruing for next month, and then for the quarterly filers, there's been about $12,000 accrued so far. So it's pretty cool. We use that quite often when we're booking the liability to the balance sheet, just so sellers have a pretty good expectation of what's coming down the pipe for sales tax and what kind of payments they're going to be facing. And it does do it collectively, like you see here, but you also have the option to break it down by state. So at the bottom of the dashboard, you'll see this little box at the bottom that says you're accruing returns due later in these states. And if you click View All, it'll pull you to this historical data, and it's broken out by state. It tells you how many returns have been filed and what is accruing currently by state. And then, you can go in here to really see, well, of the 13,000 that's accruing, how much is Arizona, how much is Georgia? So you can get a pretty good feel for per state if you have a client that is looking for that specific information. So for us, a lot of our biggest filers are California. So sometimes they'll want to know, okay, I know the total sales tax, but how much is just California? And we can tell them by just simply logging on here and showing. And this is kind of what that breakdown looks like. So once you expand the arrow, it will tell you the past returns that were filed, and then it shows you for the current period. So for Florida in this specific example, it's a quarterly filer, and it shows you what has been accruing. So far, $3,091.23 is accrued, and it will be due in January with this quarterly filing. And again, this is real time, so it updates automatically, and you get a really good idea of where you are. And then furthermore, if you want to see a specific return that was filed in the past, if you just click this hyperlink on the left, so if I were to click April through June, it would populate the return like you see here. Same screen you saw before that allows you to access this data that was already filed. So if you needed to pull support into your system or you wanted to look at something historical, very easy to do. TrustFile keeps track of that for us. And then you can print the return to pull into your file, as well as the confirmation that that TrustFile will submit. So this is what that will look like. It just gives you an idea of when it was filed and that it was completed on time, everything like that. So it's a good thing to throw into the file in the event of an audit, or if the state is claiming they didn't receive it. You can usually combat that with this certificate and then a copy of the return. All right, Hector, did you want to go ahead and do another polling question?
Yes, perfect. Let's do. Actually, let me ask before I run the polling question real quick. There was a question. There was one question that's probably related to this, which is, does TrustFile do an analysis of non-nexus states for number of transactions or total dollar amount that will give you some sort of proactive advice or warning that you may reach in an economic nexus now that we're in this post-Wayfair world? I don't know if that was a loaded question. Bruce, maybe you can answer it, or Kayla, let me know.
Yeah, and we actually are going to talk a little bit about that in these coming slides. To kind of to speak to that piece. So we may want to hold off on that question and see if it's answered with the next couple slides, and then we'll go into more depth from there.
Okay, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A towards the end. Okay, so last polling question. So we'll make the answer to that question the bonus if you stay throughout the hour after that. So yeah, and I believe that one to be a really important one, because there's a lot of uncertainty currently with folks doing multi-state e-commerce, and not
Sure.
knowing what the rules are on each state and what may potentially trigger an economic nexus. For the folks that are familiar with the South Dakota Wayfair case, Wayfair case that potentially has given the states, all of them, the power to enforce sales tax, even if there's no actual physical presence and that sort of thing. So we'll let Kyla answer that, or partially answer that on her presentation. While the polling question is up, let me see if there's any other questions here. Deborah says, is there a certification available? I wonder if what she means, I assume maybe a question for Bruce. Can you get Avalara certified? Is that such a thing through the partner program? Okay, I muted Bruce. He turned into a robot somehow. So, Kayla, do you know that by any chance?
I do not know for sure. I would imagine if it's not something that exists today, it will be something that exists in the future.
Okay.
And so hi, this is Nancy. I'll try to answer that. We don't have formal certification in these products right now, but Kayla's absolutely right. It's something that we're working on. We do provide training and technical assistance, but certification, we're not quite there yet.
Okay, perfect, Nancy. Somebody here says that Bruce went into the Matrix. That's perfect. Okay, Kayla. So I'm going to go ahead and let me close the polling question. We got 90% of the votes. It looks like 60% said that almost everything is new, and 21% a few things. So that's good. Only got 1% disappointment rate. That's not bad. Sometimes we can't make everybody happy, but I apologize for that. Would love to get direct feedback in terms of what you would have wanted or want us to include and not include. So, Kayla, you're doing a great job. Let me give you the last couple of minutes so you can wrap it up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then I just want to speak to real quick. I don't know how many people are familiar with Avalara, but they do host a Crush conference every year, where they have specialists across the nation that come and speak to this issue. But furthermore, they actually have a live learning lab through the whole session. So when we went last year, we actually got to meet Bruce personally, and he walked us through some of the TrustFile specifics live. So that's another really cool thing if you're really interested in learning more. Outside of that, though, one thing that we use pretty frequently, and like I had mentioned earlier for the question that came through, is most of our sellers we have linked directly to their Amazon Seller Central account, and that option lets us really get a good idea of Nexus, and understanding where that liability is. So on the dashboard towards the right, you'll see this option to go ahead and download a free Amazon FBA report. And once you click that, it'll let you pick which month you would like to analyze to see. And it pulls up this form here. So, and I imagine, you know, obviously this is specific to Amazon. So you have your first fulfilled from this column here, you know, kind of in the middle there. That's really nice because FBA warehouses, fulfillment by Amazon warehouses across the nation, will trigger a physical presence in the state, which will initiate that liability or obligation to file. So this report lets you see, you know, when was the first order fulfilled from, you know, a particular warehouse in this state. So for some of them, you know, it was as early as 2014. So when we're putting together a strategy for our sellers to really understand where do we want to register, where do we want to register first, this gives us a good idea of what the state might ask for in terms of a look back period for any, you know, anyone that has not been complying up to this point. And then the bold sections here are the states that we are not currently registered in with this particular seller. So it pulls in, you know, the first fulfilled from, the first sold to, but then more importantly, this for the Wayfair side of things, this total gross sales number for the month, and then the average monthly sales for the historical data, and then an idea of the tax collected. So you'll see the bold ones are in zero, or the bolded ones are zero. That means we're not registered in those states today. And if we were to try to look into that deeper to really understand what that liability would look like, we could pull this report down and get a good understanding. And then it does it monthly today, so you can't really search for a quarter or anything like that. But if you were to search it monthly, you can download it to a CSV file, and then you can compile all the months to really understand what is your total gross sales for whatever period you're looking for, and you know that will help you determine, you know, where do I need to really look at registering so that I'm compliant with this new Wayfair rule for the economic nexus. All right, and
Okay.
that's really all that I had.
So Kayla, some questions. So it looks like it will pull data if you have a third-party fulfillment center. It will pull data in terms of where it fulfilled from, not just where it's selling to. It looks like.
And I can speak specifically to the Amazon side of that. Yes, it does pull where the sale is from. So if you ship it to Florida and then Amazon were to move it to Minnesota or a different fulfillment state, TrustFile will say where it was fulfilled from, because that's when that physical presence nexus comes into play. In regards to other platforms, I'm not 100% sure. Nancy or Bruce may have to answer that.
Okay, and Kayla, your area of expertise is specific to Amazon. So, like a lot of this is in the context of Amazon, all the things that you're referring to. But do you know if it pulls data from PayPal or eBay or Shopify?
Well, I do know, so BigCommerce automatically syncs to TrustFile, which is popular for people who have individual selling stores. So we have some people on that. We are a multi-channel firm, so we do work with all firms. The ones that we auto-sync to TrustFile are really going to be Amazon and BigCommerce. But as far as the other ones, I know there are some more that automatically sync, but for example, PayPal right now does not automatically sync, so that would have to be uploaded via CSV file.
Perfect. And I'm gonna wrap it up. We're having issues getting audio from Bruce. So, Nancy, tell me if you want to add something because we really can't get Bruce in there. Nancy, you want to add something?
No, I think Kayla handled that. And if anyone has a specific platform question as far as connectivity, just write it in the chat panel and we'll get back to you.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and send all the unanswered questions to the Avalara team because there was a lot of very specific questions about, Connecticut use tax, a bunch of things that it'll be probably too much to answer in this session. Now we do have this is the third of a four-part series that we've done in conjunction with Avalara. We talked about Avalara Avatax that's recorded, posted into YouTube. We did sales tax in QuickBooks Online that's recorded, posted into YouTube. And I actually specifically pointed out all the differences between using a big platform like Avatax and using QuickBooks Online automated feature, which is kind of still in its sort of improvement stages. And then we talked about QuickBooks Desktop Sales Tax, really powerful built-in tool, and how that works with TrustFile. So today's webinar, in combination with the last four, I think is a really good treat sheet to kind of use. 4 hours worth of sales tax should get you really, really in depth into both platforms, and at least dangerous enough to be able to direct your clients towards a sales tax solution. So we'll send an email to everyone on information about the Crush conference. Nancy, when's the Crush conference next year? Summertime?
That is in May in Huntington Beach, California.
Okay, so if you are a sales tax nerd or want to become a sales tax nerd, perfect place to go. Crush conference. We'll send you information about that, and that's it. Kyla, thank you very much. You did a wonderful presentation. If you're still on, can I pick your brain about one more thing, Kyla?
Sure.
So you work for is your firm a regional firm or a mid-sized firm, small firm? How would you? I like to get an idea for the type of clients that you're working with.
For sure. Yeah, we are actually a mid-sized firm. We have two offices, one in Oregon and one in Idaho. We're still, in terms of this Amazon side and the e-commerce side, we've been doing it for a good solid 2 years, but experiencing a lot of growth very quick. Most of the sellers we talk to, haven't really been keeping accounting records or haven't been compliant with sales tax. So when they get an email from Amazon, whether it be around the marketplace facilitator laws or just certain things they're releasing to the states, they'll usually give us a call and we're happy to help with them. But we do have clients all over the world. We have some people in the UK, Australia, stateside. So we really do touch just about everything.
My question is, in the U.S. specifically, if you have a client that sells $100,000 to Amazon and that's it, is that the type of client that you'll be working with, or does it have to be like $1 million and more? I mean, I like to know what the sweet spot is. So if I'm starting to look at an e-commerce client, I want to think about Avalara right away, and maybe not think about it for a specific type of client.
Sure. So to be honest, we service all across the board. We talk to people who are just starting, trying to figure out entity formation, where they need to register for sales tax. And then we talk to people who have over 40 million in sales and help them with their issues as well. So, I would say the traditional client for us is about anywhere from 2 million to 3 million in gross revenue. But we also have very big sellers who have over 40 million and very small sellers who haven't even started yet.
And you've had success implementing Avalara even with the smaller group of clients with the under 1 million sales?
Yeah, it's actually been really well. And I think a lot of it is people will try to do it themselves. And it is very overwhelming, especially in states that break out the jurisdictions like California and Texas. And then Avalara does offer a partner program so that we're able to, really help capture our time to do the return and then also keep the filing costs low. So it is reasonable, just because, as you know, when you get up to 20 states plus, it gets expensive quickly. So we try to keep it as low cost as we can so that people can manage that cost.
I think even 2 states. Yeah, the
Yeah.
minute you do more than one state, things just really get complex. Kyla, thank you very much. I will give Kyla's contact information on the batch email, and that's it, folks. So join us next week for what's new in QuickBooks Online and the QBO ecosystem. We're gonna bring in all the knowledge that we've learned at Michelle Long and I at QuickBooks Connect that just happened a couple of days ago. I just came back from it, and then we'll right after next week we'll get back to an every other week schedule as you see on the screen. The other only thing that I recommend is join my podcast, The Art of Advisory, where I discuss how to make the transition from accountant compliance into an advisor consultant that charges by the value, not by the hour. So check that out at facebook.com/art of advisory. Once again, thank you very much, Avalara, most popular app service to manage multi-state sales tax compliance, tax compliance done right, avalara.com. Thank you very much. Join the Facebook group, continue the conversation. Any sponsorship requests, topic suggestions, go to qbpowerhour.com. I mean, qbpowerhour@gmail.com. Bye, folks. Have a nice rest of the week.